for this morning is Dr. Chadwick Williams. Dr. Chad is a product of East Preston, Nova Scotia, who currently operates gastroenterology, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, if not, you can correct me, private practice, and is a member of the Faculty of Medicine at Dalhousie University. He is also a member of the Dartmouth General Hospital Internal Medicine Service. He completed Bachelor of Science and Medical Doctorate degree at Dalhousie University prior to leaving to complete internal medicine residency at gastroenterology residency at the University of Calgary. Completed his inflammatory bowel disease fellowship at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, California. Member of multiple organizations, including Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Canada, the Canadian Association of the Gastroenterology, the American College of Gastroenterology, and the American Gastroenterology Association. Practiced for nearly 7 years in St. John, New Brunswick, prior to returning to Nova Scotia in September 2017 to start a new practice. Chad enjoys the busy clinical work of his practice as well as research and teaching endeavors. But his happiest times are those spent with his wife Glenda, who's here, and his daughters Ruby and Simone. And also his parents are Brother Howard and Mary Williams.
So it's good to be back. Thank you, Sister Edie, for that kind introduction. Before I get started, I just want to say a couple things. So this place looks pretty well, it's pretty well the same as when I left 14 years ago. But there are some differences. I was telling Pastor Porter, it's much more open up here. I like that. It's more high-tech than I remember. And actually, when Sister Edie asked me, is there anything that you need before doing your presentation? I thought in the back of my head, maybe she's talking about PowerPoint, but I actually have a PowerPoint presentation on my phone that I'm going to go off of in a second, so I should have been more specific and asked her. But I actually talked to Glenda last night and I said, do you think they have PowerPoint at East Preston United Baptist Church? She said, no. But some things are the same, right? So Tyson, you're still tearing it up on the drums, Ms. Adam's still tearing it up on the keys, so it's good to see some change. I do realize that my talk's going to be pretty lighthearted, but I know that there's some heavy hearts today as well in the Colley family, so my condolences go to the family, of course. But I know the Colley family is a big family here. It's a God-fearing family. And I know that while there are heavy hearts, you guys are also rejoicing knowing that Mrs. Colley is home. So I'm going to get out my notes here, and while I do that, I'll give you a warning. I mean, you guys know what the Williams family is like. They tend to talk and talk, and when they're done talking, they talk a little more. But I'm also half Simmons, and Simmons tend to get to the point. So I don't know how long this is going to go, but we'll probably be out at a decent time. So thank you, first of all, to Pastor Hopper Porter for allowing me to kind of commandeer the service today and then give a message. And I hope that it's a message that resonates with the young people here, those who are already going on to higher education, those who are thinking about it. But I hope it also resonates with the other community members, the parents, the grandparents, because I think that's, and I'll talk about this, but I think that's one of the biggest strengths of our community is the community, and we need to really tap into that a bit more in order to get great results like this. Thank you as well to Sister Edie for sending out the invitation. And you're right, I have been asked before to come out. There's always been issues with meetings and being apart to the way in Calgary and in St. John, so I'm really happy I was able to do it this time around. And thanks to the congregation as well for such a great showing. Before I get into more of my talk though, I certainly want to congratulate the grads. And this is all about them. I know that some of them couldn't be here for family reasons, and also there's other reasons. It's a busy time of year with semi-formals and formals and things like that going on. But we really want to show our appreciation to them, and this service is really all about them. And I got to tell you, I'm pretty thrown back and amazed really by how different it is than when I was growing up. Sister Edie gave me the list of the graduates, and I was blown away by the pure numbers. And most of them are younger, but there's some mature students in there as well, so it just goes to show you that you can learn at any point in time, and we should never stop learning, and that's when we get better, is when we learn. So that's thank you. So the other thing that's really impressive, though, is the quality of the young people coming up now, I mean, there's so many of them, and I don't mean to single any particular person up, but I've got to say, the young Mr. Howe here who came up and just gave that prayer. That prayer was amazing. I think it just goes to show, and he's not the only one. That's a long train of folks that are coming before and after him, so I'm really, really happy to see that happening here in my own community. Before I did this talk, but after I accepted it, I did run into a cousin of mine who also works at Dartmouth General, Chantal, and she asked me if I was ready for my talk. This was a couple weeks ago, and I was nowhere near ready for the talk at that time. But I told her, I think I'm a little nervous, Chantal. And she said, well, don't be nervous. And, I still have that feeling, but I realized over the past couple of days, I'm not nervous. I'm just super, super excited. I'm really happy to be here. If I go off track and start blabbering, don't worry, I'll get back to my message later on. And the other thing I'd like to say is I actually have the easier of the jobs up here. The person with the toughest job is way back there in the back, the people with the toughest job. So Glenda back there with Ruby and Simone, that's a handful. They seem to be doing all right. She's got some wingmen back there, Mom and Dad are helping out. But good luck to you guys. The introduction you heard about me, and that was my academic career, but one thing I want to get out to some of the younger people, because a lot of them, I've been gone for 14 years, so a lot of the young people here don't know me, they've never met me, but I think the thing I want to get across to them is, I'm just like you, I was just like you. I grew up on Bell Street, just up around the corner, runny-nosed kid, allergies, it wasn't anything, it was allergies. But I went to Bell Park. After that, I didn't go to Creighton like many of you did. I went to Gatesbrook. There was a French immersion program that I favored there. But I did go to Pearl Harbor High before Auburn was there. And then afterwards is when we kind of picked up Dow. So, we can do it. And I'm going to tell you why I think we should be doing it more often in a moment. But I'm no different than you guys were at that point in time. So the last time I actually stood right here at this spot was several years ago, and it was for a sadder occasion. I was saying goodbye to my grandmother, Ada Williams, at that time. And I said a few words as well as lots of other grandchildren. The reason why I bring her up, though, is she was a special lady. She was a matriarch of this community, and I'm sure all of you miss her dearly as well. But one thing that my nanny really, really valued was education. And she was really, really happy when I was kind of progressing through and when her other grandchildren progressed through. And I think she really looked at all the children in the community as her grandchildren, to be honest with you. So she really valued education. She'd be really happy to see me here today giving this talk to you. I do a lot of educational talks. I do a lot of talks, period. This is probably the most important one I've done this year, though. Usually I'm talking to other colleagues and medical folks, and half the group already knows what I'm going to talk about, and we really just argue about semantics after that. And this is more important because this gives me an opportunity to kind of reach out and share some of my experiences with the young people here. And please, if any of you want to, or if you have questions, or if you want to interrupt or interject, please do that. This can be as interactive as you'd like it to be. The only other thing I'll say is I'm going to have a few quotes here and there and a few stories that I'd like to share with you. But it is church, so I may throw in a couple scriptures here and there just to keep you honest and to show that the good book, the Word, does value education as well. So, as I told you, I'm very passionate about teaching, and all throughout my academic career I've been doing that. But even prior to that, when I was in my early years at university at Dow, I would take some time off and do tutoring programs for the young folks in underprivileged communities. So I was living in Halifax during that time, so often it was the Spryfield area, but we did have some programs even out here that I would come out to do. And two things struck me at that time. So our kids are actually really, really intelligent, really, really smart. And the reason why, they're really excelling now quite well, but the reason back then that I think they were underrepresented, and we still are underrepresented, isn't because of lack of intelligence. It's not because of lack of know-how. I think it's because they don't know that they can achieve these things. And we need to, that's on us, right, as a community. We need to kind of take ownership of that, cultivate that, because really it's a wasted resource when our children are going without education, not because they can't, but because they don't know that they can. So that's important. I have 4 major objectives that I want to get to today, and hopefully we're able to talk about them each in order. Investment. So when most of us talk about investment, we're thinking about financial investment. I'm going to talk to you about investment as far as education goes. And then I'm going to talk a bit about the role of community and the support that's needed in order to raise up our children and to help them to achieve their goals in education. We'll talk about expectations, because I think that's really a key issue. Is we need to set high expectations for our youth. Our youth need to set high expectations for themselves, and it's only in doing that that they're actually going to achieve those things that we know well and good that they can do. And then finally, I'll talk about putting in the work. There's really no other way around it. Hard work is where you reap the rewards. But it doesn't necessarily mean that hard work has to be unpleasurable. And I think learning and working towards your educational goals can be very rewarding in and of itself. So let me tell you a bit of a personal story that happened to me about 2 to 3 years ago. How many of you guys are on social media? Facebook, Instagram? Yeah, a lot of people. I mean, some of you are my Facebook friends, so you may have seen this because I posted about this a couple of years ago. It was an experience that upset me a bit, but also helped me to reflect. So I was at a meeting, a gastroenterology meeting in Toronto, and we were out at a dinner meeting. It was a small group, so it was myself, a colleague of mine who I'm very close to, and she's a good friend of mine, but there was also a representative, a pharmaceutical representative at that meeting, and they interact with us quite a bit because we use their therapies to treat different diseases. So this was a fancy restaurant in a very high up area in Toronto, and we're talking and just talking about life, really, not really talking about business. But it came up, he happened to ask me where I was from. He thought I was maybe from the States or from Western Canada, and I told him I'm from Nova Scotia. But nobody, most of these folks have no idea where Preston is, so I was from Nova Scotia. So he'd say, oh yeah, I know Nova Scotia, I have clients in Halifax. Where are you from in Nova Scotia? I said, oh well, if you know anything about Nova Scotia, you must know where Preston is. I'm from East Preston. My mother's from North Preston. And so he kind of sat back in his chair a bit, and he said to me, I have the quote here, he said, wow, it's so impressive that you've done so well despite being from East Preston. All right, so, and he didn't mean anything negative by it. He meant it as a compliment. Look how well you've done, you should be happy with yourself. Obviously, I was less than happy with what he had just said. And, I'd like to say, church, that I turned the other cheek, but I didn't. And I kind of let him know that, I thought that was inappropriate. I told him a bit more. I think I educated him a bit on what East Preston and North Preston are really about. This is coming from a fellow who had never even been anywhere close to these communities. So, but I took that and I kind of reflected on it a bit, and it made me think about something very important. This is a message I want to try to drive home to the young people. I told him, it wasn't appropriate to say that I've achieved despite where I come from. I think I've achieved because of where I come from. I'll kind of get into the details of that in a moment, but I think coming from where I've come from and having the experience that I've had here actually makes me a better learner, actually makes me a better teacher, makes me a better physician, makes me a better husband, a better father, because there are certain things growing up in this community that we don't necessarily recognize, but other communities don't have these things. This is a family here in this church, but other communities aren't like that. So we definitely learn lessons growing up here that you don't just learn out of a book or in a classroom. So I think that's an important message. And I think that's something that these graduates already have recognized. And looking at the list, there's so many different avenues of education that these young people are pursuing. I think it's just incredible. And then if I look back over the last 14 to 10 years since I've kind of been out of the loop in Nova Scotia, there are so many of my young people behind me. A lot of them are cousins of mine, a lot of them are friends of mine who are lawyers, medical doctors, teachers, doctors of dentistry, firefighters, pilots, multimedia and marketing czars. I mean, we've got the market, and we just have to kind of, I think what we should do is really use those people more, bring them to events like this more, have them come and do talks like this more, to kind of get the young people really excited and to kind of get them to see what is really achievable for folks who look like us, who are from where we're from. So let's talk a bit about investments. I'm not going to ask you what you invest in, but you can just raise your hands. Who of us has some form of investment somewhere, right? Yeah, so everybody kind of invests in something. So if you know anything about investments, what you know is to invest something, you have to take something of value, you have to sacrifice it in order to get something of even more value at a later point in time. So how do you optimize your investment? Well, you can optimize your investment by waiting for a long, long time, so the longer you have it in there, the more it grows and the more valuable it is. Or you could choose to pick something that has a higher interest rate, right? Where you can do both of those things and really optimize things. So when you think about, where you get the biggest bang for your buck as far as investment, you can't really invest in anything that's better than education, right? That is where you get the biggest bang for your buck. A very intelligent person, Ben Franklin, actually once said, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. And I think that's absolutely true. So we need to start investing more in our youth and in their education. And then what we'll see is not only are they going to benefit and reap the rewards of that, they certainly will, they'll get better jobs, and they'll be able to provide better for their families, but also you'll see the community start to grow. And I'll talk about that a bit more later on when I talk about what I think a vision in 10 to 15 years for our communities could be like. So a message to the youth though, those who are coming up, going through kind of elementary schools, secondary schools, is I think while the community needs to invest in you, you also need to take ownership of it and invest in yourselves, right? So I think that's something that we really need to focus on a lot more as individuals. And sometimes that's hard to do because the cool kids aren't necessarily doing that in school. But I promise you, the cool kids aren't the cool kids 5 to 10 years from now. The cool kids are the ones who are getting the books. So another thing that I'd like to push as far as that goes with regard to expectations is a notion of if you can conceive it, you will achieve it. Right? So that's a bit of a Johnny Cochran-like saying. It's catchy, I think, right? It's not, if it doesn't fit, you must have quit, but it's close. So if you can achieve, or if you can conceive it, you will achieve it. Can I get the congregation to say that with me one more time? If you can conceive it, you will achieve it. So I think that's powerful stuff. And what I mean by that is I think too often we set goals and objectives for ourselves that are safe. We know that we can do this, so why don't we just aim for that? And once we achieve that, we feel pretty good about ourselves. And we should, but I think we sell ourselves very short when we do that. And what we need to really do is set goals that are much more lofty, higher goals. Why don't we do that more often? Well, I think the answer to that, there are multiple answers to that, but one is because people are afraid to not achieve the goals. What if the goal's too high, and I don't reach it, and I fail? Well, I think I put to the young people and to the community that failure is a necessity. You need to fail in order to achieve. If you're not failing, or if you haven't failed, then you probably haven't tried hard enough. You need to try harder. So, again, another good quote is, it's hard to fail, but it's worse never to have tried to succeed. And that's from President Roosevelt. I think the words are true here. And we need to really, really focus quite a bit on that. And that goes at multiple levels. So I talked about the youth kind of setting their own expectations, but I think the community needs to kind of set those expectations as well. And an event like this goes a long way toward doing that. I think we're recognizing folks who are trying to better themselves through education. And I don't know, I've been out of the loop, and some of the community members here could probably tell me whether or not we have tutoring programs for our communities, whether or not we meet with the teachers who are bringing up these kids in the school systems and kind of talk to them about what special challenges we may have or what special benefits and strengths we may have, and try to coordinate that to get the best bang for our buck when it comes to our kids. But I think we really need to do that on multiple levels. And another thing I would like to say to the trainees coming up and the students coming up is, don't let anybody else dictate to you what your expectations are going to be. Don't let anybody else tell you what you can and can't achieve. I think that is something that is not always intentional in the school systems, but I think it happens in our school systems. I think our kids go through the school systems and for better or for worse, people identify them as going onto a certain track, if you know what I mean, and don't always look at them for their full potential. And again, I think that comes down to the community really pushing hard, identifying our youth as people who can do and who will do when they're given the opportunities, and then talking and consorting with teachers and guidance counselors to make sure that these things happen and that they have the resources just like all the other children do from other communities. So what about putting in the work? So as I said earlier, there's really no way around it. You have to put in the work to achieve. And what I like to say, and I say this to the medical students who come by and the residents who come by and run through my clinic or run through the Dartmouth General when I'm teaching, is education and learning is simple, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. There's a difference. Sometimes people link simple and easy together. And simple is it's not rocket science, but you have to put in the work, you have to put in the time, and that's why it's not necessarily easy. But again, there is fun that can come from learning. So I think this concept of learning being a drag, learning being something less than what you'd want to do, is something we need to kind of get out of our heads. Learning can be a lot of fun. Learning is fun. And once we kind of integrate that into our society and instill that into our minds, that's when we really start to grow quite a bit more. There's another quote I have here from RG3. I think the young folks will know Robert Griffin III, quarterback for the Redskins. So he says, hard work beats talent any day. And I think that's true. I mean, it's good to be talented, and some of us are very talented. And, I think we have all gone through school, and you've seen people who just get it the first crack. They read the book, and they know it, and that's it. Most of us aren't like that. Most of us may have to read the book several times in order for it to sink in. Most of us may have to take notes and memorize in different ways. But we all have to put in the work in order to get to the same point. And so I have another story about a colleague of mine who went through Dalhousie Medical School with me. He is a brilliant fellow, and he had what we call an eidentic memory. Anybody know what an eidentic memory is? Yeah. So I wish I had an eidentic memory. It would make my life a lot simpler. But so what it is he could see something one time, and he didn't need to see it again. He remembered it, and so for us in med school, obviously there's lots of textbooks we would have to read, lots of sessions and talks that we'd have to go to. But for him, he would see it the once, and that was it. It was in there. So it was a gift and a curse, really, for this poor fellow, because he would go to the classes just like the rest of us, and the professors would be talking about texts that we had read, a couple of weeks prior, and he'd point out to them that they were actually wrong because the text actually said something different from time to time. He was right. He was always right. But when it came time to match, so after the 4 years of medical school, you actually go into a lottery, a matching system where you get to choose what you want to do, and you may rank to that, you may not get placed where you want to. Virtually everybody in our med school class matched to what they wanted, and most of them matched to where they wanted to be in the country, except for him and one other fellow. And the reason wasn't because he wasn't smart. He was the most brilliant fellow in our class, but it was because he didn't have some of the other skills that you learn as you go through the educational system. How do you treat people? How do you interact with patients? That's stuff that our eidentic memory is just not going to help you out with. It was unfortunate, but he ended up having to do something a little different. But why do I bring that up? I think our children here, our youth here, are definitely talented, and some of them may even be blessed with an eidentic memory, I don't know. But all of them can do hard work. All of them can put in hard work. And I skipped a bullet point earlier on, but I'll talk about it in this section. I think there are good reasons. It's not a mistake that our kids are gifted and able to work harder. When you think about our forebears, the people who came here and were put here, I thought you had a question. I told you agree. It's not a mistake that our kids are gifted. The folks who came before us were very, very strong. The folks who came before us were very, very intelligent. Now, they may not have been intelligent in the classic sense. They may not have been book smart. They weren't necessarily provided with books. Some of them may have been. But I'll tell you, they were very intelligent, and they were also very, very aware of the value of hard work. So we take that and you understand that, and we have at least one biology major here. When you think about genetics, these things aren't mistakes. These things get passed on from generation to generation. So that's why now you're seeing all these young people who are kind of coming out doing all these wonderful things. It's not a mistake. They have it in them. We just have to be more ardent and stronger about bringing it out and fostering it. So I'm going to close here in a couple of minutes, but I have a couple of challenges to put out. One challenge to the youth, one challenge to the community, and then I'll talk a bit about what I think a vision may be like for us moving forward. So there is a scripture, Luke 12:48. For unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall be much required. Right? So what does that mean? So I think that means a lot of things, but the way I'm going to use it with regard to this is I think there's a responsibility that comes along with higher education as well. I think it's all well and good to go through the process and to educate yourself and to get a great career and to provide for your family. But I think over and above that, we need to give back. And there are lots of different ways to give back. Some people choose to give back financially. Some people choose to give back with their time. Some people choose to give back by teaching. But I think one of my challenges that I have to throw out to all of the learners, whatever level you're at, is to give back and to look behind you and to pull those folks up who are behind you so that they can catch up to where you're at. And before you know it, some of them may pass you. Some of the folks in the community are already passing me. So that's a challenge to the youth. But there is a similar challenge, a parallel challenge that I'll put out to the community. And I think you guys are doing it, and I'm really happy to see it. But we need to really support these young people. We need to go to parents-teacher nights. We need to get on them when the teacher says, Johnny needs to do better at this, needs to do better at that. Maybe Johnny needs not to be on, the volleyball squad this year if he can't do that. So I think we need to get after them, and we need to show them that we care. Because when we get upset that they're not achieving, what we should do, yeah, they may not be happy with it, but deep down inside they know that it's because you care, and it's because you care about education and you care about what that education means as far as opening many, many doors for them. So the challenge to the community is to get tough on the kids, make sure that they stay in the books, and do what it is that they're capable of doing. By talking about a bit of a vision. So, when you drive down Number 7 and come through our community here, or you drive down Lake Major Road and see North Preston, the communities look very similar to when I was here. And I always think to myself, why is it that we don't have certain things that other communities this size have? Why is there no drugstore here? Why do we have to drive so far to get to a drugstore? Why is there no easier way or a closer way to get to a grocery store? Why is there no, barristers? There's no lawyers' office here, or dentistry office here. There's no medical clinic. There is, some ones that pop up from here from time to time, but nobody long term. It's not because we don't need medical care. It's not because we don't need dentists and lawyers. But it's because we need to grow as a community, and we need to use these young people, get them to give back to the community. Some of them will gladly come back and set up shop here, and make this community more of a productive place. So I think, in 15 to 20 years, with all the gifts and blessings that we have in this community, there's no reason why we shouldn't be growing and fostering more of those types of businesses and shops and seeing more of that. And this is not far-fetched stuff. For goodness sakes, Trump won the election in 2016. So, these things are definitely possible. So I'd like to end where I kind of started. So I'll just say, if you can conceive it, you can achieve it. And I do believe it, that East Preston, North Preston, Sherbrooke, our communities will be better with education as the key for these young people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Williams. Oh my God. Can anything good come out of East Preston? seed. Thank you so very much for that on-time word, that word of investment, that word of recognizing the wealth that is already here. How beautiful